All right, everybody, welcome in. It's time to dig into something kind of massive today.
Oh, yeah, definitely massive.
We're talking about the Smashing Pumpkins and specifically,
Mellon Collie and the infinite sadness.
there you go. You got it, man. This is a big one.
Yeah.
A lot of ground to cover.
It's a monster.
So for anybody out there who, maybe wore out their cassette tape back in the day,
I'm sure there's a few out there.
we're going to try to give you some new perspective on this album.
Absolutely.
So to start with, 1995, the band is coming off of Siamese Dream.
Yeah.
Things are, they're on a roll, and they could have just kept doing what they were doing.
Right.
But they decided to kind of shake things up a little bit.
Yeah, they bring in Flood and Alan Moulder to produce this thing. And these guys are coming from
Different worlds.
very different worlds. Flood has worked with Depeche Mode and U2.
And these are not big names, big
time.
sounds,
Yeah.
not exactly following in the footsteps of, Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all that.
Right. This is a very deliberate shift for the band, and I think it speaks volumes about their ambition.
And I think when you listen to it, you can tell right away that they're not afraid to experiment.
Oh, absolutely. From the orchestral stuff on Tonight Tonight to the electronic vibes of 1979.
Even Salt Shakers.
Yeah, Cupid Deluxe Salt Shakers on a Smashing Pumpkins record. Who would have thunk it?
But it works.
It does. It really does. And I think that's what's remarkable about this album is that with all these different sounds, all this experimentation, it still feels cohesive.
Well, and that's Corgan.
Yeah.
He's like the mad scientist in the studio throwing everything at the wall.
Right. Creating this whole Pumpkinland, as he called it.
But it's not just about the sounds, right? There's a real sense of vision here. Like he's trying to tell a story.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's described it as the wall for Generation X, this huge, sprawling epic about life and death and everything in between.
And it does get pretty dark in places.
Oh, yeah.
Which is interesting given what the band was going through at the time.
Yeah. During the tour for Mellon Collie, Jonathan Melvoin, their touring keyboardist, tragically died from an overdose.
Just a heartbreaking situation. And it really makes you think about the weight of it all, the pressure, the lifestyle.
And it makes you wonder how that tragedy might have seeped into the music, how it might have colored their creative process.
Yeah, definitely something to consider as we go deeper into this.
Absolutely. I mean, talk about a contrast, right? You have this band on top of the world creating this incredibly ambitious music.
Yeah, and then just slammed with this tragedy.
Exactly. It makes you think about how those things might have fed into each other.
Yeah, you can really hear it in some of the darker tracks on the album, but then you also have these moments of like pure pop bliss.
1979, man.
Oh,
that song just exploded.
It's like this perfect time capsule of that 90s alternative sound, but also just timeless,
Absolutely. And the video, too, just captures that whole vibe perfectly.
Yeah. Speaking of the videos.
Oh, man, don't even get me started.
These were not your typical MTV fare.
No way. These were like mini movies, each one so creative, so visually striking.
Tonight, especially like that whole silent film aesthetic.
Yeah.
So cool.
It's unforgettable, right? And then you have Zero at the other end of the spectrum, all dark and kind of nightmarish.
Yeah, it's like they weren't afraid to experiment with the visuals just as much as they did with the music.
Exactly. And it paid off big time. I mean, those videos became iconic. They helped cement the album's legacy.
And it all goes back to Corgan's vision, right? This idea of creating a whole world, a whole experience.
Yeah, he understood the power of visuals, of storytelling. It wasn't just about the music. It was about creating a complete immersive experience.
And for me, at least, it worked. I mean, I remember hearing Mellon Collie for the first time and just being transported.
Oh, totally. It was like stepping into another dimension.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's part of what made it connect with so many people. It was more than just an album. It was an event.
And it's interesting, though, because even with all that grandeur, all that ambition, there's also this real intimacy to the music.
Yeah, it's still just a band playing their hearts out. You can hear the raw emotion in every note.
Especially in Jimmy Chamberlin's drumming.
Oh, man, what a loss.
Talk about a powerhouse drummer. He brought such a unique energy to those songs.
It's hard to imagine the album without him.
You can really hear his influence on those tracks you were talking about earlier, those darker, heavier songs.
Yeah, there's this raw power there.
Yeah.
This intensity that's just undeniable.
And the way he could shift from those explosive moments to something more delicate, more nuanced.
Oh, like on 33, for example.
Exactly. Such a beautiful, heartbreaking song. And his drumming on that track is just perfect. So understated, so tasteful.
It's a tragedy that he's not with us anymore.
It really is. And his absence is definitely felt on the later Pumpkins albums.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to listen to those later albums and not think about what might have been,
Yeah, for sure. But hey, what we do have is Mellon Collie. and it still sounds incredible all these years later.
Oh, absolutely. It's an album that just refuses to die, which is pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, it's been, what, like almost 30 years
Crazy.
since it came out, and people are still discovering it.
And rediscovering it. I mean, I know people who wore out their cassette tapes back in the day, and they're still listening to it today.
It's like that album that you can just keep coming back to, and you always find something new.
Absolutely. There's so much depth there, so many layers to unpack.
And it's not just a nostalgia thing either.
Yeah.
You know, like I was talking to my niece the other day, she's 16, and she was telling me all about how much she loves 1979.
Wow, that's wild.
I know, right? It's like this album speaks to people across generations.
It's timeless.
It really is. And I think it's because it taps into something so universal. You know?
That feeling of longing, of searching for something.
Exactly, that feeling of being young and not knowing where you fit in.
Yeah, and the music just captures that perfectly.
It's raw, it's emotional, but it's also hopeful.
Yeah.
You know? Like even when it's dark, there's this sense that things will get better.
Yeah, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly, and I think that's a message that we can all use a little bit of these days.
For sure.
Well, this has been quite a journey.
It really has.
Thanks for geeking out with us about Mellon Collie, everybody.
Yeah, this album is truly something special.
It is, and we hope you'll keep digging into it in all its strange beauty. Until next time, keep listening, keep exploring, and we'll see you on the flip side.